Okay, welcome back. I'm going to honor a martyr, a saint by the name of Saint Toribio in this segment. He's a Mexican martyr. His name is Saint Toribio Romo, and here's his picture. Bless his soul. They have his picture at St. Mary's in Fullerton. When you walk into the church, his picture's right next to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Saint Toribio is known as the patron saint of immigrants and border crossers. Saint Toribio is one of 25 martyrs canonized by Pope John Paul II in the year 2000. Several churches have relics of this saint in the United States, including the Cathedral of the Blessed Sacrament in our state capital, Sacramento, where the main altar enshrines a bone fragment of the saint. This priest martyr was shot in his bed in the morning in February of 1928. To this day in Mexico, many mothers put a small picture of this saint in their sons' backpacks before they leave home to immigrate to the United States. Unfortunately, immigration's become such a hot political topic, but the actual original migrants or illegal aliens or whatever they're called was due to religious persecution in Mexico when the government in Mexico about 100 years ago tried to absolute wipe out the Catholic Church. So they were under religious persecution, so they were fleeing for their religious freedom. You can see a picture. Actually, I marched for immigration reform. This is in the Los Angeles Times, and you can see me right here. I've got a picture, a shirt with Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we were marching for immigration reform. There's been a history in the past of visas or green cards not being given to Mexican Catholics, and it's been a prejudice against Mexican Catholics in the United States, particularly from our Masonic white Protestant influence in our government in the past, because of the concern that the church would be able to control the electoral college. So under the Monroe Doctrine, there was a crackdown on the Catholic Church in North America. So they want to limit the amount of votes that the Catholic Church would have. So they give very little visas to our southern neighbors. So that's been the history, like it or not, of this prejudice against migrants that have come into the United States for religious freedom. This priest martyr, Saint Toribio Romo, was shot in his bed in the morning on February of 1928. Newspapers have carried stories of this saint's miraculous appearances to immigrants who have gotten lost in the barren desert on the American side. It's very dangerous to cross the desert, and many have died in the desert, but there's been many miraculous stories when these migrants were about to die in the desert from heat and thirst, and this mysterious man dressed in black will show up out of nowhere and guide them out of the barren desert and save their lives. Saint Toribio's popularity amongst Catholics has grown after tales of these migration miracles which have been spreading. As the stories are told, this mysterious person in dark clothing appears out of nowhere just in time to save the immigrants from death, and he leads them to safety. This mysterious person only requests that they come visit him one day in his hometown of Santa Ana, not in Orange County, Santa Ana in Guadalupe, Mexico. So he asks that they go to Santa Ana in Mexico, to his small town, and those who do make it there in gratitude find out that the person that's in a giant photo in that town is the same person that appeared to them in the desert None other than Saint Toribio, who came to save their lives in the desert. In Toribio's day, this town, Santa Anna, was a very small town, too small to even have a resident priest. But today it is a pilgrim destination with the 1,000-seat church and a Toribio Romo museum. I got a friend by the last name Romo. Toribio Romo Museum. St. Toribio's native town is Santa Ana de Guadalupe in Jalisco, Mexico. Jalisco, that's the state. Toribio Romo was born on April 16, 1900. Toribio, as a boy, became an altar boy, and his family very devout. They went to Mass every day. They visited the Blessed Sacrament, and the family prayed the Rosary together at night. At age 12, Toribio entered the minor seminary and loved the daily rhythm of prayer and study. Toribio was at the top of his class and read the encyclical Rerum Novarum by Pope Leo on the rights of workers to unionize. See, horrible treatment in Mexico of the hard workers. They were taken advantage of. Like, we had plantations under slavery in the United States. Well, they had haciendas in Mexico, and brutal treatment of the workers in Mexico. They were forced to work 7 days a week with very little pay. Very little pay. On December 22nd, 1922, Toribio was ordained a Catholic priest. Toribio's ministry, his priestly ministry, came at the most chaotic period in Mexico's history, during the most brutal persecution of the Catholic Church in Mexico. During this time frame, 1926 time frame, when the Calles Law was enacted to crush and destroy the Catholic Church in Mexico, this barbaric persecution. The Calles Law of 1926 stipulated that the government, not the bishop, would decide if he could administer as a priest. Toribio ignored this unjust order to register with the government, which made him liable for prosecution and prison, so he went underground. In October of 1925, Toribio and his pastor celebrated an outdoor mass in defiance of the government's policy forbidding outdoor masses. That was illegal. You couldn't celebrate mass outside of a church. The people took an oath to defend their faith in the face of government atrocities, even if it meant sacrificing their lives. Father Toribio and his pastor joined in that public oath that day. 300 Cristero soldiers took over the city hall in this town and held it for several months, and the authorities cast the blame on Father Toribio and his pastor. So he was a wanted man, a wanted priest. Life for Catholics in Mexico was like the early Christians in the catacombs of Rome. So Catholics were forced to go underground, and they would have secret places where you'd have to go to get the Eucharist, communion. A hidden priest would consecrate hosts, and they would put them in different locations. And the Church, the Vatican, actually approved that you could self-administer communion to yourself because of the shortage and danger for the priests. Catholics who got caught harboring priests or hosting a secret mass would have to either pay off the police or see their land confiscated or be brutally beaten, and in some cases they could be executed and killed on the spot. For the priests, some were shot right on the spot. In the Mexican Constitution, priests were not allowed a trial. That was part of the Constitution. You were not given the right to have a day in trial. So when they caught a priest, the priest was shot right on the spot with their vestments still on. Here's a picture right here of Father Francisco Vera. They're executing him right here for simply saying Mass and wearing priestly garments. The same fate will happen to Father Toribio. Bless him. Father Toribio ministered underground, knowing if he was caught, it could be his last Mass or baptism. Father Toribio sought refuge in the state of Jalisco in the town of Tequila, where the famous alcoholic drink, tequila, comes from this town. That's where he fled. He stayed in an old building surrounded by a beautiful landscape. Father Toribio spent his last 5 months at this location before he was caught, and he was brutally executed in his bed on February 25th, 1928. Moment of silence for him. Father Toribio Romo moved into this remote country in September of 1927 with his brother Roman and his devout sister Quicca, who supported him when he was a boy, supported him through seminary, was always there helping her brother. There were no problems for 5 months at this location, but word got out that federal soldiers were in the area searching for Catholics conducting religious services, so he was a hunted priest. This happened on Ash Wednesday. After the people celebrated Eucharist, the people began to relax, thinking the danger had passed. Father Toribio sensed something sinister was going to happen. He had a very bad feeling, a premonition, and he actually seemed to act differently in his last couple days of his life. All through the day and the next day, Father Toribio was preoccupied with his own thoughts. With his final hours running out, he could sense something was going to happen. On September at 4:00 a.m., he woke his sister Quicca and asked her to prepare the altar for Mass. The Eucharist is the summit of Catholic celebration and worship. This is a celebration of Christ's death and resurrection, and was the center of Father Toribio's spirituality. His whole life focused around the Mass, as it should be for all of us Catholics. Our life should always revolve around the Mass first in our life. St. Toribio often prayed, quote, "Lord, do not leave me, nor permit a day of my life to pass without saying the Mass," unquote. About an hour later, federal soldiers found him in a peaceful slumber with one arm covering his face. A soldier moved his arm to get a close look at him and then yelled, "This is the priest, kill him!" Father Toribio woke up and he said, "I am the priest, but do not kill me." Before he could say anything else, before he can say anything more, a shot rang out with the shouts, "Kill the priest!" The soldier shot him in his bed. Father Toribio got up and staggered a dozen steps out of the building before a second shot ran out. So he was able to take about a dozen steps. Another shot rang out and he collapsed. He fell into the arms of his horrified sister Quicca, who had followed him. Quicca looked into his anguished eyes, one last time, and he died. Quicca had supported her brother's vocation since childhood and adulthood, and now God gave her the privilege of holding him during his last agony. He died in her arms. At first, the officer in charge allowed Father Toribio's body to be placed on a stretcher so he could be carried out in procession out of this canyon into the town of Tequila. This procession was quickly disrupted by unruly soldiers who began to whistle, mock, and sing vulgar songs along the way. Think about how satanic that is. Father Toribio's sister Quicca ignored them and prayed her rosary. The soldiers dumped his body in front of City Hall and then forced Quicca to walk barefooted to the barracks, where she was subjected to ridicule, mockery, and hunger for 3 days before they finally released her. She told her shocked siblings, We should not cry, Padre Toribio is in heaven. Today the abandoned tequila building has mostly fallen down, but the location of St. Toribio's death is clearly marked. You can actually go there today and see this place where he was executed and martyred. The body of St. Toribio was buried in the cemetery in Tequila for 25 years and was moved to his hometown in Santa Ana, Mexico. St. Toribio's sister Quica lived to a ripe old age, spending the rest of her days assisting seminarians in Guadalajara. So she helped seminarians. She died in 1959 at the age of 73 years old. Roman, St. Toribio's brother, became a priest and survived the Calles regime and served in Guadalajara for 50 years. Roman, St. Toribio's brother, died in 1981 at the age of 76. St. Toribio, pray for us. Jesus, have mercy on us. Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. Please join me in the next segment where I will share with you information about the hero Cristero General Gorostieta. Viva Cristo Rey.